This podcast contains strong language and discussions about transphobia and suicide. So if those are topics that you'd rather avoid, then go ahead and give this one a miss. Hello, and welcome to Mad Witches, the podcast where we say the quiet parts out loud about gender, mental health, and everything polite conversation tries to avoid. My name is Zoe, and sitting across from me is the lovely Lisa. How are you doing, Lisa?
I am good. Yeah, good to be here.
So today we are going to be talking about authenticity and connection. But first, I figured we'd have a little chat about why are we doing this?
Why are we doing Why are we doing this?
Why are we doing this?
I think we're doing this because, well, it was your idea. I mean, every time we meet up, we just end up going really deep.
Yeah.
And I think just wanting to share those and maybe say the things as you say, out loud that we don't always share.
There was something that you mentioned a while ago. So Lisa and I have known each other for quite a while. Not a huge amount of time, about a year and a half, something like that. And we met through work, and we just kind of have a bit of a vibe. And we met up for kind of one-to-ones and stuff, and ended up having really deep conversations. And I think you mentioned to me, Lisa, at one point that you kind of thought, I wish we could just press record on this conversation.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we're doing.
Yeah.
So we're just going to have a conversation and press record on it, and hopefully it might be interesting to people.
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself then.
Well, I am a writer, ex-social worker, and I'm absolutely obsessed with human behaviour, why we do the weird things we do, and how we communicate and relate with each other, just how we relate, because that's something that personally, growing up, I had to do a lot of work on to understand problems that were happening in life and where things were getting misunderstood and where things were getting lost. And I think so much of human pain can come from our inability to relate to each other. So I became fascinated with that at a very early age and set out to figure out what we do and why we do the things that we do. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah. And so from my perspective, I'm a transgender woman. I lived for, we'll come into this in a little bit, but I lived for 37 years as a man, but it wasn't right for me. But since coming out, I've found that life has become, yes, more complicated, but also a lot more fulfilling. I've been able to connect to people a lot more. In my work, I'm a video producer, so I make corporate videos. That's how Lisa and I met. And my passion really has always been for that, for not just film and television, which I absolutely love, but how film and television is made, how those stories are told. And it's even, everything about it, from the writing process, how to get a story out of somebody's head and turn it into something real that can connect with the emotions of another person, all the way through to the actual production of it. So, how do you actually create these scenes and turn them into something that people can watch and enjoy? That really is my passion. So I guess you could say that we both love storytelling, but we kind of come at it from different angles. Yeah,
and actually, well, I was just saying before we pressed record that one of the reasons that I this is I wouldn't say a challenge for me, but I've had to have a word with myself because there's a monster in the back of my head that is very aware that I can't control this because we are recording it. It's our voice, and then we can't keep recording. We're recording it, and it's going to go out. Whereas when I write, I can go back. I can just vomit my words on the page, and then I can go back and check and sort of control the narrative to an extent. I mean, obviously, once you write something, it's out there and people will interpret it as they will interpret. But at least I get to check and make sure that what I am saying, that I'm happy with it and it sounds the way I want it to sound. Whereas with this, so this is slightly uncomfortable, but yeah.
It's fine. It'll get more comfortable the more we do it, I promise. Okay, so let's get into the meat of this episode then. So authenticity and connection. So let's start with the authenticity bit. So I know that you are really keen for me to tell my story, Lisa, but I'm going to start this by saying, what does authenticity mean to you? What does it mean to you to be authentic?
This is something that this is something that I've really pored over for years, and it took me a long time to figure this out. I think it's very easy to get confused about what authenticity is. And certainly when I was younger, I would have believed that I was being authentic in my interactions, but I was so disconnected from myself that I didn't even know that I was being inauthentic, because the person that was showing up in the world was so far removed from from who I really am, from my soul, my essence, whatever you want to call it.
Your truth.
My truth, absolutely, my truth. And I know that sounds wanky, and I know in many ways, we talk about standing in your truth, standing in your integrity. But actually, when that's it. You're at your truth of who you are. And so I've just I'll start with what I think authenticity is not. It's not ego, and I think it often gets, and I've done this myself, we often confuse authenticity with ego and with people pleasing. On one end of the scale, you've got people pleasing, and on the other end of the scale, you've got ego. I've done this myself, and I know that we do, as people, we do this. You might come from a place of ego and think, well, I am who I am. Fuck you. Excuse my language, but like, fuck you.
That's fine. I think it's okay for us to swear on our own podcast.
Good point. Maybe we'll save the C word for a few episodes on. But yeah, like, fuck you, I am who I am. And, I don't care what you think. Personally, I don't think that comes from a place of authenticity. I think it comes from a place of, not all the time, but a lot of the time, that comes from a place of ego. I don't care. I'm protecting myself with this. I've got this, as you said, armor. I've got this fake strength, this facade. Fuck you, I don't care. And there can be times, of course, where a person will say, fuck you, I don't care. And it is coming from a place of authenticity. So, I'm being very mindful of the language.
Sometimes people say things like that because it gets a reaction from people.
Yeah.
And they're not saying it because they are being necessarily authentic to themselves. They're saying it because I think they want to let's say they don't necessarily, not necessarily because they want to upset people, but I think it's more a case of, I'm going to assert myself in this situation, and if you don't like who I am, then I don't care about that. And there's something in that which I can agree with, being who I am. But there are times when people say that as literally just as a way to get a rise out of people. Yeah,
and it's a defense mechanism in many ways too, because underneath that, there's a difference between, fuck you, I don't care, I'm going to go about my day and I feel fine, and well, fuck you, I don't. The second one is ego. It's
it's like this. It's almost like the second one is fuck you with a hard F. Yeah.
And I think the translation, what's often lurking underneath that fuck you, is, I really do care and it's really upset me, but I don't want to face the fact that it's upset me, so I'm just going to cover up and say fuck you.
Yeah, and kind of project all of that internal uncomfortableness outward towards other people.
Absolutely, and I think, and I've done that myself. I've gotten confused between, that's interesting, you don't like me. All right, okay, I'm a human being, so of course that hurts a little bit, but ultimately that's your call. And that, well, fuck you, I don't care. And I think it's so easy to get lost in that ego piece. And on the other end of the scale is the people pleasing. People pleasing, and constantly, from my perspective, constantly doing what you think other people want you to do, constantly. There is a difference between kindness and having boundaries and having kindness, and just going about the world constantly so afraid that someone's not going to like you, that you have to people please all the time. And there's usually a sense about it, if if you're doing something for someone because you genuinely want to and you care, and it's coming from a place of compassion or kindness and connection, and you're doing it because you're afraid they won't like you. And I've done that as well. I think many of us have done that, where it's just people pleasing. That the undertone to that is, please like me. It's not, I actually care about you and I want to do this nice thing.
Yeah. And I think, because I've done it too, I think a lot of the people who listen to this podcast will have also done it as well. That thing where we kind of gaslight ourselves into feeling like our own happiness and our own emotions aren't important, and that we have to put other people first.
Yeah.
And the thing is, there's a reason why when if you're going on a plane and they say that the oxygen masks drop down, that you're supposed to fix your own one before helping other people, right?
Yeah.
You can't be there for other people in a way which is actually going to be supportive and helpful and loving and true if you yourself have undermined your own sense of who you are and what you want to be in the world.
Absolutely.
And I think between those two extremes of sort of fuck you, I don't care what you think, and fuck me, I care everything. I only care about what you think. There is a happy medium in between the two of them. And I think where people start to get a little bit abrasive is where they fall too far on either side of that scale. I may be generalizing a little bit, but
I think you're right. And I tried to work this out for many years. In order to be authentic, you need to know where your boundaries are, and you need to know where the other person's boundaries are, and you have to respect both. And that's the key. And it took me a long time to figure this out, because my boundaries were certainly very porous, inflexible to the point that they were non-existent. I didn't even know what boundaries were, and I would have struggled to describe it to you. But the starting point for me is getting in touch. And again, this sounds wanky because the term is overused, but it's absolutely true. It's overused because it's true. Is getting in touch with your own voice. You have to get in touch with yourself and learn. And for many of us, we've spent our entire lives squishing that voice, squishing it, not listening to it, dismissing it. And it gets so quiet that you get to a point where you can't hear it anymore. And you're so lost. And that place is such a painful place to be in. And I certainly found myself in that place many years ago. So the starting point, boundaries, what am I bound? What? Like, how do you can't get there from that place. You need to start by finding your own voice, listening to your own voice, actually acting on your own voice. And I guess that comes with the starting point for me is being authentic with yourself, in that you listen to that voice and you act on it, which is coming from a place of, as you say, truth and integrity. Because if you're, deep down, well, when you're completely lost, maybe you don't even know, you can't even hear it. But ultimately, most of us, most of the time, know on some level when you're doing something that is not aligned with your values, with what you believe to be right. And when you dismiss that and you act anyway, you hurt yourself. And the way I like to think of that voice is like a child. And when that voice says, we don't want to do this, and I go shh, and I do it anyway. That you would, if a child walked in the room and said, is this a good idea, and you essentially pushed them out of the way and said shut up and locked them in a cupboard, that is abusive. And we do that to ourselves all the time.
And that's what it is, isn't it? It's a form of kind of mental and emotional self-harm. And this is something that I know about intimately, because I did it to myself for 37 years. I guess I should explain a little bit about that.
Yeah. This is, as I said earlier, your story is absolutely authenticity and connection.
I have a long history of downplaying myself, and I'm trying really hard not to. Okay. Be a big girl. So I mentioned that I'm a transgender woman, if you couldn't hear from my voice. I was born into a male body, and I was raised as a boy, and I lived the vast majority of my life as a man. Externally to people who weren't privy to my internal monologue, it would seem like I was fine. That I was, just if somewhat nerdy, kind of normal, quote unquote, human male, adult human male. But the reality was that that was never really who I was. Some of my very earliest memories revolve around me questioning who I was and what felt right for me. One of my very earliest memories, and this was when I was about 5 or 6 years old. And so this is kind of around about the time when children start to understand the difference between boys and girls. What makes us different? And I remember I was on holiday with my parents, and I wanted to go swimming, but I felt uncomfortable having my chest exposed. And so I asked if I could wear a girl's swimsuit. Because it would make me feel more comfortable. And I was told very firmly, no, that's little boys aren't supposed to wear that. Having that shot down, and I don't blame my parents for this at all, because it was the 90s, it was that was trans people weren't really thought of back then. And so I don't blame them for it, but what it did do is it taught me that I'm not supposed to think about this. That this is a part of me that it's not okay to share with other people, and that I should instead do what other people expect of me based on my biology. So I really internalized that message. So when I started to grow up, I went to school, and I just struggled to connect with other boys, and I think they struggled to connect with me because on some level I think they knew that there was something not quite. I always had that feeling of being a square peg rammed into a round hole, and it was things that boys are supposed to be into, like, football, sports in general, being loud and rowdy and getting dirty and sort of, playing rough and all that, play fighting and stuff like that. I never wanted that. I never enjoyed that. Even so far as I found it very uncomfortable doing PE, for example, in schools, because it meant I had to get undressed in a room full of boys.
Oh, yeah.
And I hated it. I hated it so much. In fact, I hated it so much that when I got to high school, I started forging sick notes. So that I wouldn't have to do that. And I did it consistently. And it got to the point eventually where my teachers just kind of gave up. I did have one PE teacher who took me to one side, and he said, why don't you like sports? Do you not like going out and getting fit and, using your body and connecting with your peers? And no, I hated it. And I realized that, I'm not the only person who hates PE, and lots of people hate it for lots of different reasons. But for me, it was that disconnect between the body that I was growing into and who I felt I was inside. And, when he asked me why I didn't like it, I couldn't really give him an answer. I knew what the answer was, but to talk about it back then would have opened a can of worms that I just was not I didn't have the language to explain it. So it just kind of got left. And I didn't have a very good time at all in school for a whole bunch of reasons, but that was really the main one. I didn't connect with people. I didn't connect with my lessons. I did really, really badly. And it was all because I felt like I had this tug of war inside me of me trying to figure out, well, I can't be my real self. I can't be who I authentically feel I should be, and I can't do the things I authentically want to do. So what do other people expect me to be? Well, other people expect me to be this certain way because of the physical meat that I have to inhabit on
Yeah.
this earth. After a lot of trial and error, I started taking on personality elements and interests that I thought other people expected of me, that I didn't really enjoy and that weren't really a part of me, but they kind of stopped people asking questions.
Yeah.
And I constructed this whole personality out of all of these false parts of who I thought other people wanted me to be. And it felt like I was putting on a suit of armor.
Yeah.
So I had this soft, squishy core of all of the things that were truly who I really am. But then around it, I built this fabricated personality of someone that I thought that other people wanted for me and that other people expected of me. And that voice that you mentioned earlier, about that little voice that says, well, I don't really want to do that. She got just kind of squeezed into a cupboard somewhere and never forgotten about, because I could always hear her tapping on the door, like, let me out. But I was too afraid to let her out because of what that would mean, not just for myself, but for the people around me, for my parents, for the friends that I did make. I eventually I went to college and I started my career, and I started working in electronics, and I did it because I was good at it, not because I enjoyed it. I mentioned earlier my passion has always been for film and television. So I did it because it was a saleable skill, and eventually I met a woman, and I hesitate to say I fell in love, but it felt like that was love at the time, and I got married, and this is a whole nother podcast talking about that, which we will do at some point, but eventually we got divorced, and it was the relationship that I had with her was extremely toxic, extremely abusive, and all it did was kind of force that true version of myself deeper and deeper into that cupboard under the stairs. And I became terrified of even thinking about it, because it was like, well, if I start thinking about it, then it's gonna come back, and I don't know what I would do. Yeah. But eventually we got divorced, and it was a very messy, unpleasant, traumatic divorce. And eventually I realized that I found myself having suicidal ideation. And I'd actually gotten friendly with various transgender groups of other transgender people online. And it was at that point that it was a few years earlier that I realized that, the reason why I've been so uncomfortable in my own skin, trying to embody this version of myself that isn't authentic, is because I'm trans. And I didn't realize that until quite late in my life, because I simply didn't have, because it wasn't talked about in the media, because it wasn't something that was in the popular consciousness, really. Whenever trans people were depicted in media, it was always in quite a negative way. And it was socially acceptable to publicly humiliate trans people.
Well, you've talked about the movie Ace Ventura.
Oh yeah, Ace Ventura. So so that was a very popular movie when it came out, and but that movie, it was incredibly popular. The climax of that movie is the forcible public outing of a transgender woman. Not just the outing of a transgender woman, but the utter abject humiliation of a transgender woman. And yes, in the story, she's a criminal. She's committed criminal acts. But the way people reacted, not just to her criminal activity, but the fact that she was trans, was extremely negative.
Yeah.
And when you are a young, closeted trans person and you see something like that, it teaches you that it's not okay to be who you are.
Yeah.
That if you are honest about who you really are, you are going to be rejected by everybody who respects you or who claims to love you. You will become a social pariah and you'll end up being, living on the street, hated by people. And that is the message that was being sent out to people like me all throughout the 90s and kind of early 2000s. It's only really been kind of in the 2010s and beyond that it's been more acceptable to be trans in public.
Yeah. I mean, I remember that scene. I hesitate to go into any detail because it's so appalling now to think about, but everybody in that scene literally vomits.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
yeah.
They realize, oh, this person's transgender, and they literally start vomiting.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is the message that I received. And it wasn't just Ace Ventura. Like, it was all kinds of like sitcoms and movies and whatever. And it was, me as a kind of young trans person trying to figure out who she is, having that message, it really negatively affected me, and it taught me that it wasn't okay to be who I am. And it was only when I started making friends with other trans people that I started to learn the language to explain who I am and to really come to terms with that and to realize that actually it's okay. I am I'm not alone, that there are other people out there like me, and that I'm not some disgusting abomination that will make people vomit when they see me, when they realize the truth about me. And as I said, so I went through the divorce and I became quite suicidal. And I realized that part of the reason why I was not being authentic with myself is because I was worried about how me coming out would impact other people's lives around me. I was harming myself for the sake of making other people's lives easier. And I was doing it every day, day in, day out. And that's the thing that quite often isn't talked about when people talk about what it's like to be trans, is when you're in the closet, you have to second guess every single move you make. And I'm not just talking about like in a macro societal sense. I'm talking about, how do you move? How do you walk? When you sit down in a chair, how do you cross your legs? Yeah. Should you cross your legs?
Yeah.
How do you talk? What kind of mannerisms should you adopt? What sort of hobbies and interests should you have? What kind of people should you associate with? How should you talk? How should you think? What kind of clothes should you wear? How should you look at other people? How should you engage with your friends? It is constant, and it is so tiring to deal with that day in, day out. And because I was devoting so much of my energy to being this false version of myself, it was taking energy away from being able to engage with other aspects of my life. And that's why I did so badly when I was in school, because I was second guessing my every single move.
What was it that, well, I mean, I know the answer to this, but do you want to talk a little bit about the moment where you made the decision?
Yeah, sure. So I had just gotten done with a mediation session with my ex, and I was living with my parents at the time. So, I wasn't, we bought a house together. We had a really nice 3-bedroom house, and all of my stuff was still in that house. And, my cat, who I absolutely adored, was still in that house, and I wasn't able to see her anymore. And I'd just gotten done with this mediation session with my ex, and I just didn't want to engage with it at all because it was all just too painful. And I just let her walk all over me. we had totally opposite personalities. Like I'm quite a emotional person, and I connect with other people. I would describe myself as, say, a little bit wanky, I guess, but as to use your terminology. But I would describe myself as an empath.
Yeah.
And she is not. Her whole thing is about getting the maximum value out of people. And she is very good at that. She built her entire career on that. And she walked all over me
Yeah.
during this thing because she knew what buttons to press and how to press them in order to get me, in order to upset me and unmoor myself so
Yeah.
that I would just agree to whatever she wanted. So we got done with this conversation, and I just felt my life falling apart. And I got up from the desk I was at, and I just walked for hours. I walked out of my house and I walked for hours. And I walked to this park near where my parents live, and it was about 4 o'clock. And when I eventually finally stopped walking, it was dark. And I sat down at this bench, and I was Googling how high a building needs to be to guarantee my death if I were to throw myself off of it. And sorry,
No, it's fine. Take a minute. Goodness.
And if any of the buildings in my hometown were high enough to do it. I ended up calling the Samaritans, and they didn't really know what to do with me. What do you say to somebody? And I said to them on the phone, I said, I'm trans, and I don't know what to do. My life is falling apart, and I don't feel like I can carry on. And the woman who I was talking to was just like, I'm really sorry. And that's all she could say. I'm really sorry. And it's like, I understand that, it's not their job to do anything. They can't do anything. All they can do is sit there and listen to you. But I switched the phone off, and I'd written a note to my friends and my family saying goodbye, and kind of laying out the truth, and coming out to them in my suicide note, essentially. I was sitting there reading back this note for like the 15th time or whatever, and I just had this line from a movie popped into my head, which is a line from The Shawshank Redemption, which is where Andy Dufresne, who's the main character, is towards the end of the movie. He's talking to his friend, and sounds an awful lot like he's going to commit suicide. And he says this line, which is, you got to either get busy living or get busy dying. And then he gets up and he walks away. And for the next few minutes in the movie, you don't know if he's done it or not. And I don't want to spoil the movie, but it has an uplifting,
awesome movie,
amazing movie. If you've not watched it, you should. But it has an uplifting ending. I'll say that much. And that line, get busy living or get busy dying, popped into my head. And I realized that was the choice that I was facing. I could either go and find a building and throw myself off of it and hope that it's tall enough that it ends my suffering, or I can do something about all of this. I can take responsibility for my own happiness. I really have nothing else to lose at this point. So I have to try, even if it means I lose the relationships that I have left. I have to try doing this. because the alternative means I don't get to see my 40s. And that was the moment when I decided that, okay, if I'm going to live, it has to be in harmony with who I really am. It has to be authentically. So I came out to my parents, and I spoke to a mental health professional who, after asking me some very uncomfortable questions, delving into all basically all of the aspects of my life, all of the stuff that I've just told you, and including up to and including things like my sexual fetishes and my masturbation habits and all of that stuff that you really don't want to have those kinds of conversations with people you don't know.
Yeah.
And this person who really had no skin in the game basically confirmed that, yeah, I'd been living with gender dysphoria for my whole life and it had ruined my life up until now. So that kind of, I suppose, made me realize the truth, that it was not that I was broken. It was that there was this disconnect between my physical body and who I feel I should really be inside. And it was then that I came out and I decided to start living authentically. So, that's kind of my story.
Yeah,
I realize that I've just spent a long time talking. I hope that was okay.
I think that was exquisite. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I mean, I remember, gosh, so many things, so many thoughts, so many. Mm-hmm. I remember you telling me as well about. Well, I want to ask, how's life been since then?
Yeah.
But I also want to ask, because I know there's a lot of misconceptions. I mean, good God, that in itself is a whole other episode.
But tell me about it. We'll do an episode about that at some point.
Raging episode.
Yeah.
We'll just call it rage. But I know there's a lot of misconceptions as well around the transition process and how. I mean, I've heard. People talk about how easy they think it is. This is not to criticize or disparage people who don't know, because people who don't know, and I didn't know until I met you, and what you have to go through and the options available to trans people.
I can talk about that a little bit if you like.
I would. Yeah, I think it's really important. I think it's because and again, I know this is another episode, so I will try not to go off, but there is so many misconceptions about trans people. Of course, we know this, and it's hideous, and we've got an uphill battle ahead of us as species because this is a big problem. People don't know, and people are making assumptions. But I think it's important for those who perhaps don't know to understand how fucking hard it is, and because one of the things that's always baffled me is what there's a lot of transphobia and a lot of assumptions about what trans women in particular are. Trying to access women's bathrooms so that they can assault people. I mean, it's ridiculous.
So that's the thing, right?
Yeah, tell us what you had to go through.
I guess the first thing really was that conversation that I had to have with the mental health professional. So in this country, that is the UK. If you couldn't tell from our accents, in this country we have a medicalized pathway for transition. And that's not the case in every country. A lot of countries have a self-ID system. But over here, in order to get treatment, and I'm talking about medical treatment, so HRT, surgery, that sort of thing, you need to have a medical diagnosis of gender dysphoria. And that means talking to a mental health professional, and basically getting a doctor to say, yes, you are trans. You are trans enough, in fact, that it is worth having medical intervention to correct this. And that means having some very unpleasant conversations. But there are roughly, so I realize I'm talking in circles a little bit here. But if you realize that you are trans and you live in the UK, there are a few pathways a few outcomes that are available to you. The first way that you can do it is and the way that it's supposed to work, is you go to your GP and you say, "Help, I think I'm trans." And your GP, if they are sympathetic and they know what the process is, will say, "Okay, I'll refer you to a gender identity clinic, and then we will liaise with them and arrange for treatment." You then get referred, and what happens next is, what's supposed to happen next is you get seen by a mental health professional who is employed by the GIC. But the reality is, what happens now is you go on a waiting list and you stay on that waiting list for a long time.
What's the average? I remember you telling me.
Well, it's a postcode lottery. Really depends on where you live. When I last looked, where I live, it's something like 17 years.
Fuck.
Yeah. And that's it. On average, you're looking at between 8 to 17 years, something like that. There are some NHS trusts in the UK where there have been some recent studies done, which suggest that the wait time for being seen by a gender identity clinic, if you live in that area of the country, exceeds your average human lifespan.
Jesus. I think we can use the C word now.
Yeah. So that's how that's the NHS pathway.
Jesus.
So for obvious reasons, I was 37 when I came out, and for obvious reasons, I felt like that wasn't an option for me. I'd waited that long. I wasn't going to wait any longer.
Yeah.
So option 2 is you do it privately, and that means that you have to pay to go and see that mental health professional to get that piece of paper that you can then use to like either a private gender identity clinic or your GP, depending on who is, depending on if you are going fully private or if you want to do a shared care kind of situation. They can then write a prescription for hormone therapy based on that recommendation. So, you go to that mental health professional, you get seen by an endocrinologist, who will then, you'll get blood tests done and they'll come up with a treatment plan for you. And that is expensive. It is very expensive to do that. I was fortunate enough that I had the support of my parents, and I had just enough savings left after my divorce to be able to start that process off. But not everybody has that option. So that's the route that I took. The third route is to do it DIY, and that is a lot cheaper, but it's a bit sketchy. So what that means is you go on websites like Reddit or other websites where there have been guides written about what you need to do, and you get your blood tests done, and then you self-medicate. So you buy your HRT medication off of the grey market online. You get it delivered to your house and you administer it yourself. And for some people that works. But it is potentially dangerous. If you get it wrong, you can do irreparable damage to your liver, your kidneys. And, it doesn't completely negate the cost because you still need to pay to have your blood test done.
Yeah.
And the drugs themselves they're not super cheap, but it's cheaper than going through the quote unquote official channels. Yeah. But there is that sense of risk, and I did briefly consider that, but I figured if I'm gonna biohack my endocrine system, I want an endocrinologist to tell me how to do that biohacking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm not an endocrinologist, I don't know, and I with the best will in the world, somebody online, I'm I'd feel a little bit weird about injecting myself with stuff that somebody online has told me to inject myself with. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I remember you telling me that, some people end up injecting themselves with something that somebody cooked up in their bathtub. I mean, you don't know what you're buying.
I mean, I don't know if that's the reality of it, the bathtub thing, but we call it bathtub.
Yeah.
But it is ultimately it's not regulated,
Yeah.
and there are inherent risks associated with that as a result of that. So that's that option. The fourth option is you die, basically. There's a reason why the suicide statistics for trans people are as high as they are. It's close to 50%. And the reason for that is because not everybody is in a position to receive the treatment that they need. And not everybody is in the, not everybody has the support they need.
Yeah. I don't know who is listening and whether there are any non-believers listening to this, but I think it's really important that it's understood how fucking difficult what you have to go through. It's not like you just woke up one day and went, "Oh, I fancy doing that."
No, it's not. This is the big misconception is there's this tendency to think, oh, you can just wake up one day and decide, oh, I think I'll be a woman today.
Yeah.
And you go to your doctor and suddenly, oh yeah, that's fine. We'll book you in for a sex change operation. And it's all done in like a week.
Yeah.
It's not how it works. It's never been how it works, and it will never be how it works. Living with this is a lifelong medical condition. I will be on medication for the rest of my life. And in order to get that medication, I've had to jump through some hoops, a significant number of hoops. And depending on which way the government sways, it could all be taken away from me at any moment. I don't want to get too political, but there is a shift more towards right-wing methods of thinking. And the thing about being trans is you just by nature of existing, we challenge some of those conservative traditional values that some people hold very dear to themselves. And there are people out there who want us gone, because they see us as a problem that has to be solved. There may very well be some people listening to this who will never see me as a woman. And ultimately, that's fine, I guess. Like, that's a decision for them to make. But their opinions doesn't matter to me anymore. Because
I think this is one of those times we can say, fuck you, I am who I am. And mean it from a place of peace rather than a place of I don't know, I think that's allowed.
With the greatest respect, fuck you.
We say cunts.
But ultimately, that people are allowed to have their opinions of me, and it doesn't matter to me because I like who I am now.
Yeah.
I can look at myself in the mirror and I can smile at the woman I see in there.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I've had that weight lifted.
Yeah.
I've peeled off that suit of armor that I spoke about, and whilst that was really scary for me to do initially, because it meant that people could, when people were criticizing me, they would then criticize the real person underneath rather than this fabricated personality that I'd constructed. What it actually means is that I don't care what people say because I like me. And it's turned out that I'm so much more resilient than I thought I was. Because if you like yourself, if you love yourself, and if you are, this ties back to the authenticity thing, like, if you are authentically you, you have that strength within you to meet the challenges that you might not necessarily do otherwise, because you have that self-confidence.
Absolutely. And that's it, isn't it? That is the crux of the whole thing, as far as I'm concerned, is that idea, coming back to the idea of authenticity and connection. When you do like yourself, and you know yourself and you genuinely like who you are, you can stand in your own truth and integrity without as much fear. You know, we're human beings. There will always be a level of fear and anxiety about interacting with the world, but you can stand in your truth without so much fear because, or maybe a different type of fear, because you do like who you are. You don't need your toys. And this is what we're talking about, you know, we don't need your toys. We don't need the things that we accumulate to bolster our false image, to bolster the ego. You don't need the big job or the money, or, you know, those things are nice, but you don't need them. You don't need people to see them in order for you to feel okay, because ultimately you do like yourself. Whereas when you don't like yourself or you don't accept yourself,
you get that external, like you get that feeling of validation from external things.
Absolutely. And you've got to surround yourself with all these things and all this, the way that people perceive you, what do people think of you, what to, you know, whether, and that, because you are covering up essentially what's something that you think is rotten when it's not. And when you, and then there's so much fear and so much anxiety and so much terror that comes with that, because ultimately you feel like you're hiding a terrible secret.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the key, the crux of this, right? So I mentioned earlier a phrase that I had to take responsibility for my own happiness. And that is what it is, right? So without sounding sort of too woo-woo about it, I believe that true happiness, real true happiness, has to come from within your heart first.
Yeah.
You can buy things, you can develop relationships with people, you can have an amazing career, you can make all of the money in the world, you can be living on a yacht, with, you know, an investment portfolio that means you never have to work a day in your life. Yeah. But if you fundamentally don't like who you are, none of that external bullshit is going to make you happy.
Yeah.
That happiness has to come from within you. And this is why when you see people who don't really have an awful lot of stuff, but are still living their lives in a way where you can feel that energy radiating off of them, that happiness radiating off of them. And conversely, you know, you hear about people who've really, you know, quote unquote, made it, you know, who've gotten all of the material wealth that they could ever possibly hope for. They sleep with lots of beautiful people, and you know, and they've got a beautiful house, and, you know, lots of cars and everything, and but they're not happy. They're still deeply depressed because they don't like who they are.
Yeah.
And you see these people who go through life desperately searching for a sense of meaning, for for some idea that they something that they can latch onto, and it's like, if I can just do this, then I can be happy.
Yeah.
You know, if I can just make it in this career, then I can be happy. If I can just buy my first house, then I can be happy.
Yeah.
And those people are never happy.
Yeah.
Even if they manage to achieve that result, because they've not dealt with that internal sense of conflict and that internal feeling of dissatisfaction with who they are. Even if they achieve their goals, it's not going to make them happy, and they will still be uncomfortable with their lives as a result of that. It's a great TV show. I was on another podcast a while ago by a mutual friend of ours, Vanessa.
The wonderful Vanessa.
The wonderful Vanessa. Maybe we'll get her on as a guest at some point. That would be great. But I mentioned a TV show called BoJack Horseman.
Yeah.
Which is an amazing animated TV show that I think everyone should watch.
Yeah.
And I say it's animated, you know, it's not a kid's show. So it's about a character called BoJack, and he looks like a man, but he's got a horse's head. And he works in Hollywood, or worked in Hollywood, but he's kind of this washed up sort of has-been actor. You know, he was in a sitcom in the 90s, and he made all of his money back then. But now he's kind of treading water and doesn't really know what to do with himself. And the show is about, well, it's about all of the ways that he fucks up. essentially, in trying to find this sense of this missing piece
Yeah.
that he doesn't have. He has this deep sense of dissatisfaction with his own life.
Yeah.
And he's made it. He lives in Hollywood. He's got a huge mansion, and he has all of these wild parties, and it's all he's literally living the sex, drugs, and rock and roll lifestyle. But he's not happy.
Yeah.
And I think watching that show, and watching this silly horseman he doesn't even really come to terms with it. Watching him wrestle with this.
Yeah. Doesn't he like go and find his old agent or something? Is there
Yes.
some wisdom? I remember you
Yeah.
telling me this.
So at one point, he tries to find his old agent who worked with him back in the 90s, and his agent's name was Mr. Cuddly Whiskers, and he's a gerbil.
Of course.
And Bojack and his friend Diane, Diane is a human. Don't think too much about the kind of the weirdness with humans and animal people. But Mr. Cuddly Whiskers has gone missing. And Bojack and Diane find Mr. Cuddly Whiskers, and he's living on his own in a yurt in the forest and drinking homemade tea. And they have this conversation with him about the nature of happiness. He sort of put together this halfway house for people who are struggling with addiction. He'd won all of the awards and made all of the money that he needed, and he'd done all of this stuff, but it still left him feeling empty. So he kind of disappeared from the world and kind of went to go find himself. He says, sometimes you need to take responsibility for your own happiness. And Diane says, you don't think that's a little selfish? Mr. Cuddly Whiskers responds with, I don't know what to tell you. I'm happy and I'm not going to feel bad about it. It takes a long time to realize how truly miserable you are, and even longer to see that it doesn't have to be that way. Only after you give up everything can you truly find a way to be happy. And when I saw that episode, that really connected with me.
Yeah.
Because I realized that I had to do that, right?
Yeah.
I had to take responsibility for my own happiness because no one else was going to do it for me.
Yeah.
Nobody else was going to have those conversations with the mental health people and sort out the hormone therapy and change my life in the way. Nobody was going to change my life in the ways that I needed to change it in order for me to be happy with myself.
Yeah.
I had to do that. I just think it's interesting how sometimes the media that we consume can kind of connect with us in those ways.
And it's interesting. Diane says, "Isn't that selfish?" It goes back to what you said earlier about the adjust your own oxygen mask first. And is it Maya Angelou? It may not be her direct quote, but I've heard her speaking about it. No, there's an African proverb: if a naked man tries to give you his shirt, run a mile. Essentially, that's probably not how she worded it. But when your cup is full, you have so much more to give. You have so much more because you're coming from a place of fullness, of joy, of truth, of compassion, of love, of kindness, real kindness. Not I will give you my last Rolo if you promise to give me something back because I need. So when you come to anything, whether it's a work or a relationship, let's talk about relationships. You come to a relationship from a place of, okay, well, if I'm not happy and I just constantly do everything you want, ultimately the undertone to that is, yeah, but that's going to make me happy then, right? Because you're going to love me and then I'll be happy. It's just a bunch of empty, naked, hungry people walking around going, I'll give you the nothing that I've got if you'll give me the nothing that you've got. And it just doesn't work. This idea that when you make yourself happy, you're selfish. No, I think it is selfish. Okay, the word selfish. Let's not even, that's a whole other podcast. I'm not talking about it being selfish, but this idea that because when you make sure that you are solid and joyful and coming from a place where your cup is full, you have so much more to give. And it comes from a place, like we all know, we sense it on some level. When someone is doing something for you or giving you something, and they're doing it because they feel they have to, or because they think they should, or because they want people to think that they're a good person, or because they ultimately are signing some unwritten contract with you where it's like, well, you owe me now, or, you know, we don't even acknowledge these things to ourselves.
This is it, right? So that there are people out there who approach their relationships in a transactional way.
Yeah.
They treat their relationships with other people as a zero-sum game. And this is the kind of the connection bit of this, I guess, is the fact that when if you are happy with who you are as a person and you feel fulfilled in who you are and how you represent yourself to, you know, not just to the outside world, but if you feel that you are living in harmony with who you are, then that means that the relationship that you develop with somebody else doesn't need to have that transactional quality, because you're not doing it to get something out of somebody else. You're doing it because it's, you know, it's how you feel that you ought to be in order to be the change that you want to see in the world. You know, and that's the thing, the biggest learning of my life, I think, is the fact that you have to do it yourself. You have to look after yourself. You have to do that mental, emotional, and physical self-care in order to be in a good enough position where you can help the other people around you and really connect with them.
Yeah, absolutely, and help them because from a good place, because you want to help each other, and we're all connected, we're all one, and well, that's another podcast. But and I just wanted to go back to something you said earlier about the stuff and the toys and the money and all that sort of stuff, just in case there's anyone listening thinking, oh, does this mean I can't have nice things? No, you can have nice things. I just want to clarify. When it goes back, if I could talk about my own experience a little bit, I grew up. It's that idea, isn't it, about if yes, you can have money, you can have lovely things, you can have awards, you can have all of that if you want. You can have whatever you want, whatever it is, you can have that. But recognize that is the cherry on the cake, that is the icing. It is not the cake, for fuck's sake. And if you, like you say, if you don't ultimately like yourself underneath, and you're denying yourself, if yourself is still locked in a fucking cupboard and you're just moving around the world in it like this avatar that you've created, then you can have all the money you want. It doesn't fucking matter because you can't enjoy it, because ultimately yourself is locked away in a cupboard, gently screaming at you, please let me out. And then it comes out in harmful behaviors, because when you do lock yourself in a cupboard, that pain screams and will manifest in other ways. And the way it manifests, it can manifest in actual harmful selfishness in the way that you manipulate other people. It can manifest in a desperate need to be in control and then harm and manipulate other people. It can manifest in addictions. It can manifest in anger. It manifests in ways that breaks the connection between you and other people. It stops you. It'll come out whether you're aware of it or not. That pain, that desperate scream will come out in ways that will harm connection and will prevent you from actually truly connecting with people. And going back to the money is the obvious one, isn't it? If you make money because you're doing meaningful work that you love, or, and you've got money, it's like, great, that's an extra cherry on the top. That's nice. I don't have to worry about money anymore. Thanks. That really does help. But if making money and adding to your pile because you're hoarding it, because you just need to make money because no much is ever enough, then that's because you haven't dealt with. You've made the cherry, the icing on the cake, and it's never going to be enough, because if you're putting icing on shit, you're still eating shit.
You have a shit cake.
You have a shit cake. and the answer to that is not to get more fucking icing. Fix the fucking cake, because you're eating shit. You still, no matter how much icing you put in that cake, it's shit.
Yeah.
And I know I've had this conversation with this someone in my life who I love very much, but we disagree on this. Whenever we've talked about money, this person has a lot of money and it's great. This person has a lot of nice stuff and buys me really good Christmas gifts. Let's be clear here, okay? I have a pair of Louboutin shoes because they bought them for me, so I love my fucking shoes. But if something happened to my shoes tomorrow, I would be fine. And we've had this conversation, and this person who I love very dearly has said to me, but people act like they don't care about money. It's like, okay, there is the other extreme where you act like you don't care about money and that you don't need, because we need a certain amount of money to live and a certain level of comfort. And it does.
Unfortunately, we do live in a society.
We do. And money is the currency by which we, we pay for things. That's currency that we have created, right? So it is a thing. And when you have money, you don't have to worry so much. And I'm not denying that for a second. That is, we could do a whole podcast on money. Maybe we should. But it is not the thing. And while I've said to this person, yes, money helps. And money, just like, this sofa I'm sitting on, it helps. I'm comfy. We didn't have to sit on the floor today. It helps. My car, it helps. I don't have to walk home today. All these things are helpful. It's great, but it's not the thing.
Yeah.
And when you make money or stuff or what people think of you, the thing, that becomes your priority. And you can't connect with the person in front of you when you're thinking, what can I get out of them? How can I make money out of this situation? How can I manipulate this person? How can I get the best out of this? Oh, I have to be careful because I don't trust anyone. And when you think like that, you think that everybody else thinks like that. So you've got to walk about the world being careful, going, people are going to try and manipulate me.
Yeah.
And so that is a massive barrier to connection. And also you're just putting more icing on top of the shit cake rather than fixing the fucking cake. And I know from my own experience, I grew up we were poor. We were very poor, and that has followed me and plagued me my whole life. And I realized a while ago that I've got this massive fear of being poor again. I've got this massive fear. So money has been a tricky one for me. And again, I want to be very careful not to go off because this is a whole podcast in itself. But money has been a big thing for me my whole adult life, because if I lose my work, if I lose my work, my ability to work, my reputation to allow me to work, any of those things, then I won't have money and I'll be poor again. And for years, that was my biggest fear. And don't get me wrong, I'd rather that didn't happen, But I realized a while back that the fear of that came from a place of, if I can't work, if I don't have any money, then I'll be poor again. And what that means about me is I am that piece of shit, unhappy, worthless person that I grew up believing myself to be. And a lot of that was wrapped up from growing up without money. Not being the kid that didn't have, being the kid that didn't have the nice things, all that sort of stuff. And, living in a poor area and all of those things. And there's so much shame wrapped up in that. And that's why my fear about not having money was so huge, like fucking huge, disproportionate, massive, like existential fear. If I don't have money, I can't exist because it means I'm this shameful being. And when I finally realized, oh, no, that's not true, actually. If I don't have money, it means I have to struggle for a while. Doesn't mean I'm shit as a human being. Doesn't mean that's true.
The thing is, there's always going to be more money.
Yeah.
Was you only get one you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's there's definitely something in that, isn't there? Because there's this whole thing about how society sort of tells us that in order to be happy, you have to be rich and powerful and famous and everything. And I think there's a lot of very, very wealthy people who make it their entire life's goal to accrue as much money as possible. And it's just about making the number go up. Because they don't do anything with that money. They just sit on it and hoard it like dragons.
Yeah.
But the... oh God, I'm going to end up getting political.
It's our podcast. We can do what we want.
Yeah.
We are coming back to the connection point for our listeners.
Yeah.
This is all related.
But there is a tendency among the very wealthiest people in the world they don't do anything with their money, or if they do anything with it, they spend it on frivolous, pointless shit. They don't actually use it to make their lives or the lives of the other people around them, better as a result of that. It's just about that external ego stroking.
Yeah.
And kind of trying to find that validation in all of those external elements to kind of sort of say, so it's like you can, oh yes, I have my beautiful mega yacht. So that means I've made it.
Yeah.
Right? Right? I can be happy now, right?
I'm okay now, right?
I'm okay now, right? And the thing is, that feeling doesn't go away.
Yeah.
It just means that when you've got that mega yacht, you just want a bigger mega yacht.
Yeah.
Right? If you've not dealt with that internal core disconnect,
yeah,
with that internal feeling, then it doesn't matter how big your mega yacht is, you're never going to be happy.
Well, it's like this. Somebody said to me, I've read this in a couple of books as well, and somebody said it to me a few years ago, that money is an amplifier. If you are a hungry, fearful, untrusting person and you make a shitload of money, that will amplify your fear, how your mistrust, and maybe if you're a manipulative person, that will amplify how manipulative you are, because you've got to keep doing those things to keep the thing that you're hoarding, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you have dealt with the stuff underneath first, and you like yourself and you trust and you have boundaries, so you can build trust because you trust, you can have intimacy and build trust with others because you trust yourself to have boundaries. And when you have all that wonderful stuff and you ultimately like yourself and you are authentic, then money amplifies that, and you are generous and you do good things with your money. So money is money is a neutral. Money is a tool. You who you are underneath will determine what you do with that and what results you get. So
as a result of all of this, just to bring it back around a little bit, and maybe to tie it off, because we've been talking for a long time.
We have it.
As a result of me making these changes, of me accepting myself for who I really am instead of who I think other people want me to be, of putting my own happiness first, it has meant that I've been able to connect with other people a lot easier, a lot better, and develop much more stronger, more genuine connections with other people around me. The relationships that I've developed since I've come out and been my true self, both in my personal life and in my professional life, have been so much more genuine, because I'm not putting a barrier between myself and the person that and the people that I'm connecting with. I'm not putting up a front anymore. And that means that they can actually see who I really am, and they can connect with who I really am. Whereas if you are putting that barrier in front of people, you're blocking that connection with somebody else. You're only allowing them to connect with that external. And I think most of us do build that suit of armor in some way or another, right? Like like lots of people have a version of themselves that they like, almost like a suit, they put it on when they go to work, and then they take it off when they come home, and they become more true to themselves when they get home. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have boundaries, because you absolutely should. But there's a difference between being somebody totally different to who you really are in one part of your life, and somebody totally, to who you truly are in other parts. The friendships that I've made now are so much stronger and more genuine as a result of that, and the confidence that's come from it as well. So I've been chairing networking meetings for the last 6 months. I never would have thought that I would be the kind of person to stand up in a room full of professional business people and chair a meeting of them. And I've done that now. And the only reason I've been able to do that is because I now have the confidence to be authentic to who I am. And because of that authenticity, it means that I've been able to connect with the other people in the room. And I think that if we could all be a little more authentic with ourselves, we would all find that those connections become stronger.
Because and again, this term sounds wanky and overdone, but because it's true, it's all about connection. It's all about connection. That is what we are. I genuinely think that is the root of so much suffering today for so many of us. It's about connection. We are not supposed to be disconnected. And there is, goodness me, disconnection would be a whole other episode in itself, and the reasons why we're disconnected. But a massive part of that, I think, is when you are not authentic with yourself. It starts there. Be truthful with yourself, and then connect with yourself, and then live authentically. That's how you connect with others.
And I think a lot of the negative behaviors that people express when they're not being authentic with themselves come about as a result of them being afraid of how other people perceive them. And that is the thing, right? Because if you, and that's kind of, I touched on this earlier, where I say that I can look in the mirror and smile at myself.
Yeah.
So I don't really care how other people perceive me.
Yeah.
I'm going to dress the way that I want, present myself the way that I want,
Yeah.
go about my life feeling like I'm being authentic to myself. So I don't really care so much about other people's perceptions.
Yeah.
Like, yes, it's nice to know that people like me for who I really am. But ultimately,
that's the cherry,
if they,
isn't it?
but that's the cherry, right? Ultimately, if they didn't, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And that's why I can say, if there are, and like I said, there will be people listening to this, I'm sure, who will never see me as a woman. But quite frankly, I don't care.
Yeah.
Because I see me as a woman, and my opinion of myself is what matters to me most.
Yeah.
Their opinion doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
And the people who do engage with me in good faith, which is pretty much everyone that I have cause to interact with in my day-to-day life, the connections that I have with those people are so much stronger now as a result of me being true to myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm so glad I know you. Yeah.
And I know you too.
But it goes back to what you were saying earlier about what you then bring to the world when you are being authentic. When you are being authentic, because, and we are British, so I will be mindful of how much love we spill on this podcast. But you certainly bring a lot to my life by being yourself. I never knew you when you were being inauthentic. I've only known you in the last year and a half, and you bring a great deal to my life. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Right, very, very British, very, very British.
Very, very, very British. Yes. We can't be too overt about our feelings. Yeah. What's
next? What are we doing next? What are we talking about next time?
So
Zoe is the note taker and organizer here.
this whole thing was my idea. So if it turns out to be shit, you can blame me. It's not going to be shit. It's going to be fantastic. I know it. Okay. So next topic that I have on my list is relationships with narcissists.
Whoa! Yes!
So we both have experience of this, and I'm looking forward to doing that one. So we're going to spill some tea, I think.
We are going to spill some fucking tea.
So if that sounds interesting, then be sure to follow us, and we'll put this up on sort of Spotify and all of the places that you can usually find podcasts. But that's going to be our next topic, I think. So we've been talking for a long time, so I think it's probably time we cap this off now. So, Lisa, is there anything you would like to leave the listeners with?
Oh goodness, I feel like I need to say something profound. Let me check my notes. Was there anything? No, I don't. I mean, just to reiterate that point, when you like yourself, you're far less fearful of losing your toys.
Yeah.
And you can still have your toys and play with them and enjoy your toys, but without the fear that if you lose them, that means something terrible about you. So yeah, if any of this resonated, start with yourself.
I think that's definitely a good thing to end the podcast on. The only thing I can add to that really is, if you're listening to this and you've got this far, thank you.
Thank you.
And if there's one thing you take away from this, it is to be authentic, to be yourself, love who you are, and be human and treat other people around you with that same humanity that you would want to be treated yourself. Be the change you want to see in the world.
Absolutely.
So with that, we'll close out, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you next time. Thank you.